In the next part of this camera modeling, we're going to continue our exploration of hard body modeling using direct polygon modeling that doesn't require subdivision surfaces. We're going to look at this faceplate. The faceplate on the opposite side of this component that we've already modeled. Since we've modeled that, we can repurpose what we've already done for part of it. So our starting point is to use this as the beginning for the faceplate on the other side. So what I'm going to do is reset the object's origin to the center of the universe. Shift S, let's do cursor to world origin. And then we'll do object, set transform to 3D cursor. Then we'll just come over here and we're going to do a mirror modifier long Y, and then we'll apply that. Tab key, let's select all of this. P key, and we're going to break that off into its own selection. Okay, so there it is. So we'll call this faceplate side 2. And we'll go ahead and turn this off. So this is actually going to be another component that is going to be derived from this over here. So let's go ahead and turn that off, and we'll turn that side off. So the next thing that we need to do is basically remove components that we've already modeled. So let's come into edit mode, tab key. I'm in the move tool and I'm in select box mode, but I want to be in face mode because we're going to marquee around the parts that we want to remove. Hold the shift key to deselect that polygon. Press the X key. We're going to delete those faces. Let's come down here and do the same thing. Shift key, deselect that, X, and then delete those faces. And we're just going to do this quickly. X key for these components. X key, face, X, delete the faces. Press the 1 key to switch over into vertex mode. Select all of these, and we're going to do a merge vertices at center to collapse all of these vertices. Shift R, Shift R, Shift R, and Shift R. And then we'll take these remaining vertices, bring up the context menu, and we're going to dissolve those. Now I've got missed one right there. Now we've got basically kind of a clean slate to work on this other side. Now it's got this rounded feature on the side, and we're going to begin constructing that. We need to develop a profile that will function for that. And I've already placed 3 points that I've just developed as reference points. So let's come over into the side view and we can see those 3 points. So let's do this. Let's isolate these. Press tab to leave edit mode and press the question mark key to isolate these into their own temporary environment. Now I'm going to select the top, Shift S, cursor to selected. Let's come over to our preferences and make sure under add-ons, if you do extra, type in extra, make sure you have the extra curve objects enabled. Now let me just show you something else too while we're here. Let's come down to navigation. I always have orbit around selected enabled, and I also have zoom to mouse position. So those are 2 features that I always have enabled. I don't believe in the default installation of Blender they are, and they're very, very useful. Let's come down where I've got a collection already called side bump profile. So I will select that, Shift A, and we're going to come down to curves, down to one of the extra objects. So this is what that add-on enables. It's built into Blender by default, so just enable it. Click that, and we want to go into 3D, switch over into NURBS, and then we're in edit mode. It's dropped us into edit mode. Let's also make sure that snapping is turned on, and in vertex mode, press the E key, snap to here, and press the E key and snap to here. Now, note that we've created a curve type of object, but it's a NURB object, but we're not seeing any curvature. So there's actually a minor bug in the system that prevents the curve from showing up immediately. In the curve object, data objects panel, come all the way down to active spline and set the order to 4. actually it should be 3. And then that will make the curvature appear. And I think that is going to work pretty well. But since we're modeling the direct polygons that we're going to be rendering with, we need to consider the resolution. So we need to consider the resolution. Let's look at this resolution U here, but it's actually a little bit difficult to kind of see what the tessellation of the curve is, which is what we're interested in. So let's do this. Let's come up to geometry, and where it says extrude, type in 0.05, and that'll give us a temporary extrusion that we can clearly see the tessellation. And I actually think as a default, that's going to work pretty well. So that's just to visualize. Let's turn that off, press Tab to leave edit mode. Let's call this side curve. And then I want to duplicate that. I'm going to press Shift and D and then Escape, just because I want a duplicate. Let's turn off the original. I just want to save that in its original curve form, because now we're going to bring up the context menu and we're going to convert that explicitly into a polygon mesh. So when I press Tab, we can see that. But we have one kind of minor problem. The tessellation does not leave a point in the center, and I want a point in the center. So I'm going to select both of those center points, bring up the context menu, and then do a merge at center. Let's just take these two, press S and then Z, and I'm going to bring those in a little bit. So I'm just going to kind of do some really quick, very minor, bring that back, editing, just to make sure I have a point in the center. And that works pretty well. Tab leaves edit mode, and then press the question mark key to take us back into our primary editing environment. Let's come over, and I'm going to turn snapping off. We'll do this a little bit of a different way. Let's move it over. I designed it so that these points were right aligned with this outer edge right there, but we want to get it snapped in exactly. So let's press G and then X, and then press the B key, take this point and move it along until you hit a point right on that outer edge, and it'll get us right to that location. Now let's come over to the main mesh. We've got already this single loop going down the center. Press the Tab key. Let's zoom back down over here. We'll repurpose that. Double click to get that loop. Press the G and then the Z key, but B gives us the snapping function. We can take that right to that location. That gives us a precise entry point to edit it, to merging that into the rest of the mesh. So let's come in now into the front and press the K key. We need another loop. Click X key and then the C key. That's important, just so it goes all the way through. Click and return. And let's do the same thing down here. Double click so that we've got that entire loop, which you can see. And then let's do the same thing. G, Z, press the B key, use this as the snapping point to get it right to that location. So we've now created the basic geometry to integrate that. We need to remove a couple of polygons now to make room for this curved section. In face mode, I'm going to marquee across all of those, press the X key to delete those faces. Now let's take note that we've got this inverted sort of bevel feature, and we're going to be taking a look at that here in just a minute, but we needed to make sort of general space. Tab key leaves edit mode, come back to this polygon mesh, which is, it's really a curve that's been converted into a mesh. Tab key in edit mode, select all, A key, and then press E to begin extruding that, X just along the X direction. And I'm going to pull it just about that long. It doesn't need to be a specific length. Let's press the Tab key to leave edit mode, hold the Shift key, and select both meshes at the same time. Bring up the context menu and let's join them together. Tab key takes us back into edit mode. Now in edge mode, I can select both of these loops, and let's press the G, X, and then B key again. Let's take that point and snap those so that they match up. Now we need to weld the vertices because the two aren't welded together. These two primary polygon islands. So one key goes into vertex mode, a key. I'm just doing everything all at once. But one thing to remember is that when you are working with direct polygons, you're going to tend to working with much smaller polygons. So when we come down and we do merge vertices by distance, we do have to be a little bit careful of the weld distance. That you don't weld things like smaller polygons. So that is something that you do just want to be careful of. And this will weld, it'll catch the 4 vertices that needed to be welded, and it'll tell you at the bottom, but you can also just come over and select things and move them like that if you want to double check. So let's do this. Let's come in here and let's add one more loop right in here. And now in front view, we need to actually create the rounded part here. Let's come down into this central section. I will switch over into vertex mode, and I want to find that center vertex. You can see the rounded form that we're working with. So we need to create the cap, sort of cap component. And I need to press Shift and S, do cursor to selected. 2 key takes me into edge mode. I'm in select box still, so I can marquee on those edges. And then we'll come down to the spin function and come over to press the N key, come over here into the tool tab, and we want to switch it so that the axis is the y-axis, the one we're looking through. And then we just grab this and we rotate that around and we get it pretty close. Now, be careful. It's listing 180 degrees, but it's actually rounding off some decimal points. So which you can see right there. So manually type in 180 to make sure that that's exactly right. Now, this is something we need to take up in terms of resolution because we are direct polygon modeling. I think I'm going to take that up to 48. And I think that'll probably work pretty well. And then click, and we need to come in and we need to weld those also. So back in vertex mode, A key, bring up the context menu, and we'll invoke the by distance function again, and it's off the record area, but it says 59 vertices just got welded together. And again, this is something we want to be careful of because now we're starting to generate smaller polygons and vertex distances like this. So we're going to be careful of this as we move forward. Let's click to deselect, and now we just need to fill this area with a polygon to integrate that. Double click and look for the perimeter. Make sure that everything is welded correctly. If it hasn't welded correctly, you'll see kind of the selection appear in this area. Press the F key to fill that. So we're working with ngons now, and I'm going to double click this loop, hold the Shift key and double click to select that one, bring up the context menu, and we're going to dissolve those edges. And that leaves big ngon right here. It's actually kind of hard to select because it's overlapping. And but we do want to actually, let's connect this down the middle. And I think having that single connection will help. So I'm going to go back into vertex mode so it's kind of clear that we want this central vertex right there. I will press the K key, snap it right there, and then press the X key and then C so that it goes all the way through. Click and return. And so we just divided it in half with this location. So the method that I used to originally construct this geometry used the boundary method for controlling normals. And so we're just going to continue with that method. If we look here at the top, we've got this rounded form coming in, and we've got this hard angle here, and it's got a blend. So we need to actually first put in a boundary set of loops, and then we'll put in the curvature. So we'll come in and double click to select. I'm holding the Shift key as I double click, but we have to come over and we have to look at these. I just want to bring these to your attention, this area, because this is a little bit of a nebulous zone, but we're going to deal with that in detail in just a minute. So let's look at that. I kind of like to keep looking at it from the same angle. We're technically modeling from what is the back side of this object by looking front to back, but it doesn't matter. It's all good. So we need to come over to our friend, the bevel tool. We need it to be in the 2-1 configuration, which will create boundary loops on either side of the selection that are planar to the existing geometry. Let's come over and go into Active Tool so that we can select. Now, this is where we have to kind of think about the resolution of the geometry that we have, because we've already got a loop here that's going to be fairly close. And if I'm thinking about the rounding happening within the width of this boundary loop, and I'm wanting to put an existing larger loop in place that's going to function as that boundary zone, we may end up causing some overlap here. So let's just do it and then we'll take care of it. So click, hold, and drag and pull out. And I want it to be about that large, but we are in fact getting an overlap. Now, the way that this is constructed is that it's actually created a polygon that has extruded over this polygon here, and then it reconnects back. So the way that we fix that is a very easy fix. We double click on this. In fact, let's move this so that we can really kind of see. If I press the G key, do you see how that's constructed? Press the escape key, bring up the context menu, and then we just do a dissolve edges, making sure that dissolve vertices is there. And that gives us that boundary geometry. But we do have a little bit of an issue right here, and this is what we're going to look at next. So let's zoom down a little bit more closely here. So we've got some wonkiness going on. I'm going to select this edge and this edge. We have a visual indicator of what it is that we're working on. Press the K key, click here, and then press the X key, C key, and then click, and then return. And you can see how that's created that boundary right there. So we just come over into face mode and we will just outright delete these. We're going to correct that in a minute, but we need to come down to the bottom and do essentially the same thing. So let's come into the front, K key, click, X, C, click, and return. And then we just delete all of these, X key, and delete those faces. Now I'm going to come into edge mode, select this edge, bring your view up to the top, hold the control key down and click, and we'll get a select loop between function between those two edges. Press the E key, then B, come to this vertex and move that right there. Do it again. E key, B, click, and snap that into location. Okay, and there we go. So that corrected that modeled that bit of a ledge. So come into vertex mode. I don't think I specifically need to go into vertex mode, but it's just, when I think of welding vertices, I like to see the vertices. A key to select everything, bring up the context menu, and again, do merge vertices by distance. And because I've got all those small polygons that are off screen, I'm wanting to make sure that I don't accidentally weld them. So I'm going to decrease that size. Since these were precisely snapped, it's still going to weld, and it tells me that it removed 10 vertices. And I'm just going to do a double check to make sure it hasn't welded anything over here. It hasn't, so we're in good shape. Now we just need to put in the manual rounding that happens between this offset feature, this rounded design feature. Come into edge mode and let's double click. We're in the bevel tool. So let's come up and let's initially put in 4 with the shape of 0.5, which is rounded. We're an active tool, so I can click, hold, and drag and just pull up until we get something about like that. I do think I'd like there to be maybe a little bit more resolution there, and I think that's good with the value of 6. As I look at this, I would like to maybe modify the topology just very slightly. And so I'm going to double click this loop, press the G key, which is normally a move, but if you press the G key again, it takes us into slide. And I'm going to slide this by a small amount. Do the same thing with the next loop, G, G, And let's blend that like that. So I'm just blending the distribution of polygons just a slight amount. Okay, so there we go. Tab key leaves edit mode. Let's make sure we have shade auto smooth enabled, and we can come over and we can take a look at it. And there we go. See, that looks really good. So that back face is done.